Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're doing another indie horror spotlight. Today I have with us, he's a director coming from the UK, and he has an amazing movie I now definitely enjoyed, and it's called Haunted Ulster Live. I have with us Dominic O'Neill. Dominic, welcome to the Horror Room.
Hi, thanks for having me, Travis.
Pleasure having you. So I've had the pleasure of seeing it, and I absolutely enjoyed it. But tell my audience a little bit about Haunted Ulster Live.
Yeah, so it is a feature. It's set in 1998 in Belfast, in Northern Ireland, and a local TV station investigates a haunted house live on air. Um, there's a lot of the usual like haunted house stuff. The bring in paranormal investigators to try and speak to whatever it is that's happening in the house. And during the program, you switch between seeing what's live on air and what's happening behind the scenes every time they go to a commercial. And as you can expect, things start to fall apart, gets a bit chaotic, and wouldn't say any much more than that. It's a kind of similar premise to Ghostwatch, which is
Yes.
obviously a notorious found footage classic. And what makes it a little bit different is that it's like a regional TV station and everything's happening in the context of Belfast, Northern Ireland in the 1990s when there was a lot of conflict up until then, and then there was sort of a peace process that helped end conflict. You could say that's a short version. Obviously, that's a whole other conversation. But in the film, this is all happening kind of behind the scenes. There's kind of this kind of febrile environment happening outside, and this is the kind of live TV that I grew up with, where everything was rosy and nice, and everybody was really friendly and happy. And it was almost like in some ways, it was a distraction from what was happening outside your doors.
Yeah. And that's one thing I loved about the movie, because like you shoot to the news channel and it's so friendly. Like even the advertisement has like kids with butterflies, and then all hell is actually taking place behind the scenes.
Yeah. Which is fun because that way, normally in like a kind of found footage film like that, you only ever see the on-screen personas of the performers. But the good thing about seeing behind the scenes is you get to do a bit more character stuff. Character stuff is hard in these kinds of films, especially when you have short run time, lots of cast. But we wanted to really make sure that that we did have rounded characters, and it's a little bit of like we don't make fun of anybody. Like I actually, when I was writing it, I liked all the characters pretty much, and I think it's quite affectionate in some ways. Like there's a little bit of nostalgia for that kind of TV, which is, well, okay, it's 25 years ago. It doesn't seem that long to me, but it is. But it feels like it's 100 years ago. Like it feels so old-fashioned now to even have a podcast like that.
Yeah, I mean, we are in. I mean, listen. Yeah, it's been 25 years where we've been in the age for. Boy, I feel old, but it's been a long time. But we've been in this reality series.
Yeah.
Scenario for decades now. I mean, it seemed like yesterday to me. When I was watching like the first Survivor and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, boy, yeah, it's been a long time. But like. Yes, it does seem old-timey now to us, but like, I mean, I'm 41. To me, it just seemed like yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you came of age in the 90s, it feels like, I was in my 20s. It must have been. Then you do the maths, and you're like, oh man.
Yeah, no.
but that's what I like about that time period. Like, it's a real transition. In Northern Ireland, 1998 is considered like transition from the end of the Troubles into relative peace. It's also a big transition for, like you're saying, for TV. Like the broadcast TV started really changing because because the internet was becoming not widespread yet, and obviously you couldn't broadcast on the internet until a lot later, but it was already starting to change how people made TV programs and how they broadcast them, and also the analog digital shift, which is starting to happen over a period of a few years. So you get to do that sort of like digital video look, which I really love, which has its own, it's not quite VHS, like it's got its own quality to it. And you get to mess around with like old TVs and analog signals, and which is all like a lot of found footage trope stuff. But I love the aesthetic of doing all that in the 90s. It just really, like, I can't imagine if we'd shot it and we'd set it in 2023. First of all, it wouldn't have seemed true because, you know.
Yeah.
Well, you do get those ghost hunting shows do still exist, but they're very dramatic. Like, they're totally different. It's, you know, it's like entertainment more than sort of like, you know, paranormal investigation.
Now, was it tough to, because it does look like a 90s show, like reality show. Was it tough to get that effect?
The actual camera effect, we shot digital, and we had a brilliant DP who has done a lot of work in TV, so he understood, like, you know, the kind of angles that we should be doing, just where the camera should go and where the camera should be, just to make sure that it had that kind of live TV feel. And his camera assistant was also the colorist, and he was also lighting. We were, you know, he was doing like three things, but because he was a colorist and he was on set, that was amazing, because he produced a look for the camera that we had during the shoot. So at the end of the day, we could see, because you know how normally you wouldn't necessarily see the final look. Mm-hmm. We could see close to the final look every day, and we just did a lot of research. And I don't know exactly what he did to get that look, but he nailed it. I agree. We toyed with the idea of shooting it on digital video, but it would have been a nightmare. You know, it's a nice idea, but the idea of dealing with tapes, backing them up, what if something goes wrong? You'd need two cameras. What if your camera just stops working? What are you going to do? You know. Yeah. So there's the risk, the risk on a low budget film, the risk of shooting on of some kind of analog is very, very high. So we were happy with the look, and you achieve that look by just doing your research and doing all your prep, and all of that is like, it takes time, but it's free. You just need to just sort of on the internet, looking at photos, and all of our pre-production. We spent a lot of time on costume, production design, and everything, because we knew that it was cheap to get all that stuff right, and that was effectively what was going to sell the film. Because if people look at it and they're like, "Oh, it's obviously, you know, it's not the 90s. It's not going to work." No, don't get me wrong. It's, you know, it's there are bits of it are bored. We get away with it, you know.
Yes,
we get away with it.
But yeah, but definitely had the feel of like that 90s reality TV show look to it, and it was it's a more of a grainy look, and because you know, I mean, they weren't. Back then, I mean, they weren't putting a lot of money. The reason why reality shows were so big back in the day was because they weren't putting a lot of money into them, you know, and you didn't have to, and you didn't have to pay actors and actresses, because the majority of people that were coming on these shows were free. You're paying a couple $100 for travel. Yeah,
exactly. And also, like, people were just not used to being on camera then, because now, like, we're just. You take you know, my son thinks this is a camera. It's called a phone, but as far as he's concerned, it's a camera. We're just so used to it. Whereas, like, in the 90s, like, taking a photo was, oh, you have a camera, it's a big deal, because, you know, it takes film, and, you know, that's expensive. You have to get a process, blah blah blah. So people just acted a little bit differently on camera, and that works really well for our film, because when we were doing the exterior shots with the crowd, people were nervous because there was a lot of extras who, weren't maybe prepared to have a line, but on the day it was like, okay, could you do this? Could you do this? And even though they were nervous, it just worked for the film because they should be nervous because they should be real people, and somebody's just put a camera in their face, and they can look at the camera because it's a TV camera. Where normally in film you'd be like, don't look at the camera. So all that kind of stuff goes in your favor, and you're sort of factoring that in when you're planning it. You're like, we weren't like, what's the cheapest film we could make? It was more sort of, well, I have this idea for a film, and it would be, you can see how you could do it much more cheaply. One location, one night, so everybody's in the same costume, and documentary style, so that it's just single camera. You're not having to do the same scene 3 or 4 different angles. You couldn't do it without brilliant actors, though, because our actors were fantastic, and they're all
great job,
and a lot of theater experience. A lot of them knew each other, because when you're shooting a really tight schedule indie film, I'm sure like, you're not getting 10 takes. You're maybe
imagine
4 if you're feeling good, 4. But when it comes down to it, sometimes it's 1 or 2. That's it. You gotta get going. You gotta move on. So having great actors is crucial. I would say, recently talking about it to people, one of the most important things, and it's sound. I'm sure you know that. Always sound. You can have bad picture. If there's good sound, you'll watch it. If you have a good picture with bad sound, no.
Yes.
Sound and actors, We could have shot, if it had come down to it, we could have shot it on our phone, but with good actors and good sound.
And this is something I mean, this is something that's the debate out there, right? As an individual who is a film connoisseur, especially the horror, I'm the audience, right? So filmmakers, you're making your movies for me, right? And I say all the time, I'm like, the importance of having good actors and actresses in horror movies in the year 2024. Now, in the 80s, that might have not been that big or that important. For the year 2024, you have to have good actors and actresses. Like, you can't just go to the local strip club and get a stripper and, or some guy off the street, which I see a lot of indie filmmakers do. They have inexperienced actors and actresses. And because for me as a horror audience, the bar is so high now when it comes to horror.
Yeah.
I cannot, my brain can't go back to the 80s where people are like, yes, John, where are you going? I'm going over here. That will knock me completely. You have the best story ever. You have the best cameras. That right there would knock me the fuck out of watching your movie just like that.
It's strange because you put so much effort into everything else. I know what you're talking about. You see it like maybe the same film has put a lot of effort into special effects or atmosphere or lighting or whatever. But I know exactly what you're talking about. There's nothing like it worked in the 80s because maybe they had like trashy actors, but the film had a trashy look, and like it was shot on film probably, so you've got all of that kind of nostalgia for it and everything. But because it's easier now to make films, there are places where you're right. There's a lot of competition because it's easier, so you've got to put a bit more into it. I feel I don't. Maybe it's harder for people in other places. I feel very lucky that in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, we have a lot of talent. We've got a lot of people. It's a relatively small place, so you could. We in Belfast now, we've had Game of Thrones, obviously for years, finished now. But Netflix come here and make films, and HBO we've got big studios, so people are really skilled, really skilled. Crew are skilled, and actors have got a lot of big set experience, but they'll still do the smaller stuff. So we're really lucky. We're in that position, you know. I think it'd be a lot. I can't imagine what it's like trying to create a filmmaking community if you're in a LA or even London, you know, where you feel so much like a small fish in a big pond. Sometimes it's kind of nice to be in the little satellite places where, you know, creatives have to kind of flock together because there's less of them, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I 100% agree. But that's something that, you know, that I've always, like, there's been a debate that, like, heard some indie horror filmmakers say that, oh, acting's not important. I can just hire someone off the street and not pay them, and they just no acting experience, and they'll say the audience doesn't care about acting. The audience does not care when it comes to horror acting. I'm telling you, we fucking do. Like, listen, for guilty pleasures, you put a Terrifier or something like that on. Yeah, we may not care, but like if you're going to do something like what you're doing, a found footage that's, you know, has a story, the acting has to be there. If it's not there, it's hard to watch.
Yeah, it's hard to watch. It takes you out of it, and you start thinking about the fact that the actor's not very good rather than the film.
Yes,
but I think any filmmaker who thinks the way you're thinking, like, at what stage do you stretch yourself and think, you know, I want to make a better one. I want to write a better character. I want to have an actor who can sell it like this. Because that, you know, if you're only concerned about, like, oh, the audience don't care, like you're saying, like, obviously you don't know every single audience member. And you should maybe, like, value yourself a little bit more. And because let's face it, good actors they're one of those things that's it's an easy fix. Just takes a bit of work, but might take a bit of money. But you're probably, you know, you could get if you can get somebody off the street for free, you can probably as easy with a bit of work get a decent actor for free. It's not the biggest, like, effort in the world to correct, you know. I'd say the other things you were talking about, like really good sound, that's a harder thing to achieve, but, you know, it's obviously as important.
I agree. Now, well, one thing too, we were talking about. So you this is amazing found footage. I'm a huge found footage fan, and the first found footage movie I've seen, which everybody knows I now love, is the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah,
and it was an amazing found footage movie. It was huge, and then a lot of found footage horror movies came out, and they just start watering down, I feel like, the product, and there was a lot of bad stuff that came out. But now I'm seeing within the last, I'll say, 4 to 5 years, found footage is finally making a resurgence. There's some great stuff coming out, especially in the indie scene.
Yeah. Funny, just a couple of weeks ago, I saw Late Night with the Devil.
Great one.
Yeah.
Great one.
It was. Has it been released in America? I don't know if it's released over here yet.
I saw a screener of it.
Brilliant. No, that had a really cool look. Like, they nailed the 70s chat show look. But I thought it was funny. Me and my producer Will were watching it, and we were like, "This is great," because this is actually hitting a lot of the same, like, it's got some similar ideas to our film, like behind the scenes and stuff.
Yeah,
which is brilliant, because it's like, because that'll be big, and we could be like, well, if you like that, watch this. But I know I think it's cool that people don't view it as a genre that should just be, you know, carbon copy. It's because it's obviously making a cheap found footage film is the easiest thing in the world. Let's face it. Making a good one is difficult, and I agree. I like that people are still coming up with new ideas. I saw the Blair Witch Project in the cinema when it came out. I'm pretty sure I saw it on a Halloween night, and even though I knew it wasn't real, um, it stayed with me for a long time. Really, really. I still think about it. I think I saw it again in the cinema, and it's like I agree. But it pushes a certain button with you. Like my wife doesn't like it. And I get that. Like it's for some people. If you don't connect with it, that's fine. For some people, it's just a bunch of people running around in the woods.
Yeah, with a shaky camera. Yeah.
I totally get that. But if it pushes a certain button for you, it just like triggers something, really primitive in your brain, and it does that for me. The first Paranormal Activity did that for me as well. And
yes, scared the shit out of me.
I watched it on a laptop for the first time, which is actually a really good. That's like perfect way to watch that film, because that film was made for laptop, because it's got the security cam kind of feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Lake Mungo. I didn't see it for a long time. I like how Lake Mungo's had this kind of, like, I don't think it did much when it came out, but it's built up a lot of steam as a lot of people's top 10 found footage. And there's quite a few others.
Check out. There's one that came out last year, and I gave it a best found footage movie of last year. Indeed, it's called 13 Sherwood Place. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Okay, no, I haven't.
Oh, it's so fucking good. It is so good. It's so good.
There are some that are like, I watched one recently, and it was like child abduction, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
yeah, that's tough.
I think I'm more into like the supernatural found footage. When it comes like, weird torture, depressing, bleak shit, I just no. I needed to have some kind of fantasy edge to it. I think. I watched a few when we were in pre-production for this, because I realized how many I'd never watched. There's a great one that I'd never heard of until a couple of years ago, called Exhibit A, which is in English, by 2007. It's not recent. Exhibit A, and it's not a supernatural story, but it's really well acted. It's really well. It's all shot. It's a daughter documenting her father's breakdown. It's really, really good. Really good. I saw that top 10 found footage was trending on Twitter or somewhere recently, and I was interested in looking at people's lists. But yeah, I think that there are people who have preconceived notions about found footage, and because our film has the premise is identical to Ghostwatch, and we're sort of like, we're transparent about that, because thankfully I think when people watch it, they're like, oh yeah, so it's it's its own thing. So it's just really good. That it's hard to market your film when what I think is the good stuff about it, you don't want people to know any of that stuff. So it's like, this is a film about a TV crew investigating a haunted house on Halloween night, and that is okay. I think I've seen that film before. And you're like, no. Then of course, weird. WNUF Halloween Live is good fun. They shot that on like VHS about 2013, and they do the public access TV thing, and I think our film is probably that's probably your equivalent of like what's public access TV in America, because we don't really have that over here. Yeah.
It's weird when it comes to horror fans, right? A lot of horror fans have this ill feeling about found footage. Like, you say something found footage, they're like, oh, I hate found footage. Blair Witch Project. They go automatically Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity, which are which are my two favorite found footage movies. They're definitely my top 10 favorite horror movies. Because and if you ask me three movies that have scared the shit out of me in my life, Candyman, the original Candyman is one, and then I will say Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity, the original one. Those movies literally scared the shit out of me, and like, and if you think about Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity, there wasn't a whole bunch of blood. There wasn't a whole bunch of gore. There was actually none. There was no monster. You didn't see anything. It was less was more.
Yeah. It's all psychological.
Yeah.
People probably have a bit of a prejudice just because there were so many copycat bad films. Because
lots.
If you make a film that cheaply and it makes hundreds of millions, everybody wants to get in that action. So there was a lot of years where there were films that were so cheap and so bad, but they were getting theatrical releases. So I can see how that might have turned people off. When you scroll down to the very bottom and you see all the copycat sort of like
it was from 2001, like 2010. The market was plagued with copycat Blair Witch bad found footage. And then, thank God it died off around about 2011. It completely died off. And it died off for, almost a decade.
Yeah.
And then, but it started to make a resurgence now. And it getting made. But like you said, so many bad. But the same thing happened. The same thing happened to The Conjuring. The Conjuring came out. I can't remember what year the original Conjuring came out, but it was something different. It was something game changing. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, then comes Insidious, and then comes this, and then comes that, and it was just boom, 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 copycats of The Conjuring coming out every 2 seconds.
Yeah, just those kind of I don't know what studios made all of those, but it feels like they're kind of Hollywood, relatively big budget, probably going for the tone of The Exorcist, maybe not quite as controversial, but they're going for that kind of feel, like a big budget Hollywood horror film, which is good for us because that's probably a lot of new horror fans over the last 10 years probably got started watching those films, and that's been the gateway and all the other stuff, But I like those ones. I probably find them less scary, but it's just I like seeing what people do with atmosphere and tone, and and when they've got the big production, they can have all the really interesting lighting setups. I think I haven't watched all the Conjuring films at all. I've seen Insidious. I'm kind of a little bit picky. I found that I like all kinds of horror. I know everybody says that, but I really do. I watch I love Hammer horror, especially Christopher Lee Dracula's, and the real kind of glorious Technicolor kind of English Gothic horror. Then I'm into a lot of 70s exploitation stuff and folk horror from England, Britain, in the 70s as well. And then I'm into all my trashy slasher franchises from the 80s, I know most of them are trash, but I found myself rewatching all of Friday the 13th about once a year for the last few years. It's almost like comfort food, And every time I rewatch them, I'm like, 3's my favorite sequel. Then no, 5 is my favorite sequel. Everybody loves 6, but it's funny, I thought it's into 6. But you know what I mean? I can almost to relax, I can stick on Friday the 13th Part 3. Don't know why.
And I used to love Friday the 13th, the series. I also love. Yeah, I used to love them. Growing up. And I saw Jason Goes to Hell in the movie theater. That was the first movie I saw in the movie theater. And I used to be I used to love the big three, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th. But over the years, I've liked the Nightmare on Elm Street and the Friday the 13th movies less and less where I watch them, and they're getting kind of harder to watch because
Yeah.
majority of those movies and those series were not great. I mean, they were just bad. It was just a carbon copy of the previous one. And the Nightmare on Elm Street, I mean, I would say the first four were decent and New Nightmare.
Yeah.
But there was a whole bunch in between there that was like horrible. And Friday the 13th, the same thing. Like, I'm not a fan of the original. I'm not a fan of the original.
Yeah. It's probably the one that most people would rewatch the least because you've kind of seen it so many times, and everything in it is done in the later episodes. I mean, it's never, nobody's ever called it a classic. I mean, it was never supposed to be a classic. It was always a cheap knockoff. But same with like. I would agree with all that. Like Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street, especially for me. I got the Blu-rays for the first time actually of Nightmare on Elm Street, and I rewatched them all a couple of years ago. And I love how like you've no idea what's going on. Like there's no continuity in the sequels. They get absolutely ape shit. But they're all about the set pieces and the practicals, I think. Like that's really what each of them, 3, 4, 5, even 6, I would argue, like have big set pieces, and that's really what you're there for: the model work and the map painting, all the mad stuff. But Halloween films as well, yeah. Like the night that I saw Ghost Watch on TV, it was on TV in the UK in 1992. I'm pretty sure was the same night I saw Halloween for the first time, and that stayed with me. Like that I would say that and Blair Witch Project, the first time I saw Halloween, because in the 90s there was no new generation of horror films. This is pre-Scream.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no like slasher tropes. But now, like if you show the original Halloween to a 16-year-old, they'll be like,
"This is not scary." Yeah,
scary. I've seen this a million times. But in the 90s, that was still scary because there was still nothing like it. They just didn't make horror films like that until Scream in '96. So yeah, that really stayed with me, and I think that's the interesting thing. It's like, do these films lose their impact? Like, why is it a good thing that these people are being desensitized?
No, it's not a good thing.
Is it just a movie thing where they're not really desensitized to it? They just know it's not real.
It's not a good thing. I think it's that we become desensitized as a society and a culture. I think we care less and less, and I think nothing shocks us anymore. And I think that's a problem, but that's a whole nother story. But like, I mean, like for instance, I grew up watching horror movies. Yes, my parents started me at 5 years old. Would I do that with my kids? Hell's no. Absolutely hell's no. I would not do that. But I go to horror conventions, I go to, things like that, and I see people with 5-year-old daughters going to see Terrifier 2. And I'm like, why would you? Because the Terrifier movies are nothing like what we grew up with. No. You know what I mean? They're nothing. I mean, it's to the extreme. It is the most it's extreme fucking shit. I can imagine at 5 or 6 years old, if I would have saw Terrifier or Terrifier 2, I would have been in some kind of psychiatric ward or something. Like, it would have fucked me up bad, but like, I feel like 5 or 6 years old today. But then I disagree, because I feel like 5 or 6 years old, I feel like kids today are fucking pussies. So I mean, I feel like, I don't feel like they're tougher than mentally than I was in my generation.
No,
but
plus they have no choice. They're going because their parent is bringing them.
Yeah, they're being
they don't have
forced.
any choice. Um, and what's the thinking behind that? Is that cool? My kid is so cool because they're not scared of the Terrifier 2. And I don't know. That's weird. Yeah.
That is weird because I mean I'm 41 years old and I've seen a lot of horror movies, and watching that shit it's disturbing. Like watching those Terrifier movies are absolutely disturbing to watch.
Yeah, it's not my kind of horror. Like I watched the first one out of curiosity. It's just not my bag, you know. Clearly, I mean, it's interesting that they are so popular. I haven't seen the second one.
The second one is way better than the first one. I wasn't a fan of the first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
The first one, the second one at least had a story somewhat to it. So.
Okay. And it's unusually long, isn't it? It's like 2
It's
hours.
like 2 hours long. It was like 2 hours and something minute long, and I saw it in the theaters, and I was like, they could have cut about half an hour out of that movie.
Yeah.
It was just too much. It was overkill.
Yeah, it's really interesting because if I from just the look and the name, I would have just thought that must be a fairly run of the mill kind of streaming horror, but it's not. Like it's huge.
It's not.
It's huge, and I always think if this is a gateway for people getting into other stuff, that's great. Like if that's your in. And then you start looking at films that influenced it, and that brings you to other stuff. There's lots of positives there.
But the negatives is, I'm a horror fan. I love stuff, but as a negatives, I think we're being desensitized. And like, I feel like in the next 10 years, we're going to be watching movies where people are actually getting killed. I think that's
this happened 20 years ago when the Hostel films and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the torture porn movies.
A lot of films influenced by Hostel, or not even influenced by Hostel, but just said, okay, now it's okay that we basically just torture people, and that makes it horror. So this did happen 20 years ago, and then that just must have just died off because people got sick of it, and the people are
that's what it was.
Yeah, kind of that was fun as a sort of like as a one-off experience, but we really want character, we really want story, and that and I think that's true. Like no matter what, good scripts and good productions will rise above, and get noticed. Because if there's 50 Terrifier knockoffs, they're not going to have the same success.
It's going to be done, yeah. But that's what. But if you notice though, in the horror genre, it goes through cycles, right? You go with Halloween, right, and then boom, you got a billion. Halloween was something new, was revolutionary in the horror genre, and then boom, you have a billion Halloween knockoffs. You have Friday the 13th come out. You have Sleepaway Camp. You have Prowler, all kinds of shit coming out. And then the next stage was Scream. Scream came out. It was something new, fresh, and then boom, you have I Know What You Did Last Summer. You have Urban Legends. It was the Scream knockoffs were going out left and right. I mean, even Halloween H2O was a Scream knockoff. It wasn't even a Halloween movie.
Yeah.
And then people just got tired of it, and then found footage. Then the Paranormal Activity movies came out, and every single movie was about paranormal, and that died off. And then the torture porn, that's a Hostel series. Boom, boom, boom. And right now we're in the super gore phase. We're in like that super gore. Well, I can speak in the United States. We're in a super gore phase that we need over the top blood and violence. That's to quench our horror thirst.
Yeah, I'd say English speaking territories are all watching it. All this is worldwide. I would say no. Obviously, a lot of foreign language markets probably have their own niches. Although, as we know, horror fans are very cultured in their horror, and they watch horror from all over the world. But But I hadn't really thought about that. But you know, if it is a phase, then and it will end.
Yes, it will end. It will end. It will end.
The next thing will come along. What will that be, though? But you know, if the just talking about the shift from teen horror, the kind of Buffy influenced kind of
Mhm.
horror, which I love. Like I love late nineties, early noughties horror. Even if the films are trash, they look amazing. Like they all look beautiful. Like I always think about that film Valentine with David Boreanaz in it,
Oh
and
yes, yes.
the casts are all beautiful, and the whole film is it's shot in film, of course, and it just looks they don't films just don't look like that anymore. It just
But even like the Faculty. Did you watch the one called The Faculty?
no.
Oh, The Faculty is probably one of the best to me. One of the best of those horror movies that came out, and it was about high school, and the teachers are all like aliens or some shit, and like it's a really fucking
Never watched it. That's funny. Yeah.
really fucking good. But if you look at all the posters from the horror movies in that time frame, they literally all have they all have the same Scream layout.
Yeah.
They use the same poster model.
Yeah. Yes, the Faculty. I remember now. I think it was probably felt like an outlier because it was aliens, was it?
Yes.
Which that was a gamble.
But it was. I mean, it was definitely a horror movie. It was definitely gory. It was a good story.
And then probably the reason for the shift into the paranormal activity, found footage type stuff was to do with technology changing and more people having access to cameras, and film is so expensive, you know all that. So what is the next phase? That's kind of interesting. I think one of the problems with found footage for me is I don't know if I can make a found footage film set in 2024 because what does that look like? Obviously, people do it. Like Host, I saw the sort of hour-long Zoom thing with like a split screen where they basically shot it on laptop. Thought that was great. Like that was such a good. I didn't the end. I didn't love, but I thought as a concept and the performances and from sort of like what can we do during lockdown from that perspective, I thought it was brilliant. I haven't seen Dashcam. I've heard it's good.
Dashcam's good.
And I've seen Deadstream, and obviously they've kind of nailed that kind of like YouTuber sort of streaming. So yeah, obviously there are ways to do found footage in 2024, but the idea of doing like a traditional found footage of somebody running around with a camera, no,
Done.
It doesn't feel real.
Done. Yeah,
it doesn't feel real. Maybe if they were shooting it on the phone, but I don't know.
Yeah, because the one I tell you about, 13 Sherwood, it was something I never saw before. The found footage. It was like Alexa, like we have Alexa on a fucking house and shit. It was an Alexa found footage horror movie. I never saw that before. I was like, this is interesting.
I mean, yeah. See, immediately as soon as you said that, that's like I haven't seen that before. That's cool.
Yeah, and it was fascinating because I was like, and I've always said, I was like, boy, they should make a horror movie about your Alexa being possessed or some shit. And
yeah,
boom, 13 Sherwood Place.
It happened because every idea is somebody is working on it right now.
Yes.
So I'm glad they made a good one out of it. That's great. Yeah.
All right. So Dominic, where can everyone find you, my friend?
So Haunted Ulster Live is on all the social media as either at Haunted Ulster Live or at Haunted Ulster. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If anybody lives in Brazil, we're playing Fantaspoa Festival, which is one of the biggest genre festivals in South America. We're playing at that in April. We're playing in Unnamed Footage Festival in San Francisco in March. And we're in Panic Fest, which is great because Panic Fest is huge, which is in Kansas City in Missouri, which is in March. We're in the virtual festival But Panic Fest is fantastic. And the film itself, we are in talks with distributors for North American release, so keep up to date with our social media and you'll find out when you can see it there.
Awesome. Dominic, listen, I could talk to you all day, man. This was a blast.
Cheers, Travis. Yeah, likewise.
Listen, everyone, follow Dominic and follow this amazing movie. Listen, it is absolutely fun. If you like found footage movie, even if you don't like found footage movie, you probably will like this one, especially if you grew up or were around that area or that range time frame. All right, guys. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce. That's next time. Take care.
Cheers. Thank you.